Good morning. I'm Mark Owens, and on behalf of the Commissioners of Pitt County, it's my pleasure to welcome all those that are present and those that are viewing otherwise. I call the meeting to order. Let's have our roll call, please. Thank you. Now we will all stand and we will have our invocation and pledge.
Let's pray. Father, we thank you today for your many blessings upon us. We thank you for the opportunity of serving this great county of Pitt. We thank you for each one that is in our audience today, each one that is viewing us by way of television. We pray, Father, that we might do a job that is pleasing to you and that we would do a job that would be most beneficial for the citizens that we represent. These blessings we pray in your holy name. Amen.
Amen. Please face the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Manager, are any corrections or additions to the agenda?
No, sir.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor, raise your hand. So ordered. All right. What's next?
The first item we have are the Employee Service Awards, Mr. Chairman. If we'll go down front, we can proceed with those. If Lord Hardy will come up, she can assist us. Yeah, there you are. Thank you. Well, this morning we once again have the pleasure of recognizing county employees and their service and tenure to Pitt County government. And as we do on a quarterly basis, we have both the award ceremony and the reception that follows afterward. And this morning we will be recognizing years of service from the categories of 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, and 30 years. So to do things a little bit different, we'll start with the 30-year category this morning. No, I'm sorry, I'm gonna mess Florida up. I can't do that to her. 5 years. Okay. Matthew Anderson, Social Services. Okay. Samuel D. Coward, Detention Center. Okay, couldn't be here. Lauren Dale, Corporate Extension. Dolores Farmer, Planning Department. Michelle James, Social Services.
Here we go. Here we go. Good morning.
Congratulations. Kelly Joyner, Public Health. Deborah Lovett, Social Services.
Good morning.
Hope Melvin, Public Health.
Good morning.
Cynthia Moore, Tax Administration. Mark Nottingham, Planning.
Thank you.
Melissa Roberts, Tax Administration. Angela Simpkins, Social Services. Jana T. Singleton, County Manager's Office.
She here. A lot of abstentions today.
And our last 5-year category award is to Thai Han T. Tron, Social Services. If I've pronounced that correctly. Taha Tron.
Good morning. How you doing?
Oh.
Oh, I didn't even see that.
And a round of applause, please. In our tenure category, we have Mary D. Carmon, PATS, Pitt Area Transit System. John Demery, Solid Waste. Cynthia Farmer, Communications. James Gardner, Environmental Health. James D. MacArthur, otherwise known as Jim, in Emergency Management. And our last 10-year award is to Demetrius R. Parker, Public Health. Round of applause. In our 15-year category, we have 4 employees: Craig G. Bounds, Detention Center. Okay. Chauncey Congleton, Sheriff's Office. Jennifer Hardy, Public Health. And our last one is to Lori V. Stewart, Sheriff's Office. Round of applause. And our 20-year category is represented by these blue boxes sitting on the table, which at the 20-year mark, the Pitt County employees, as we normally announce, have the opportunity to select a watch to commemorate their 20 years of service with the county. So we have a number of 20-year employees. Walter Guthrie, otherwise known as Shane, with the Sheriff's Office. He's here this morning. Doesn't get a watch. Sorry, just kidding. Mark Harrell, otherwise known as Vince, with the Detention Center.
Good morning.
Robert B. Jones, otherwise known as Brent, with Environmental Health, could not attend this morning. Then we have Melinda Modlin, MIS, Management Information Services. Congrats. Wallace Moore, Sheriff's Office. Joseph G. Reason, Sheriff's Office. And our last 20 years to Renee B. Williams, Public Health. Okay, a round of applause again. In our 25-year category, we have 3 employees: Romeo Garcia, Sheriff's Office; Dana Place, Sheriff's Office; and Natalie Ramsey, Social Services. And our last recognition of the morning is 30 years. If Jenny Elliott will come up and receive this for her employee. Scott.
Romeo
Romeo.
Okay, we'll come back and get them. We're going to go back and get somebody in just a moment, but for 30-year, if Jenny Elliott will come up and take the award for Alma Haddock within social services, she could not attend. Congratulations. Yes, we had Romeo Garcia came in. We were recognizing him for a 25-year award. If you'll come forward with the Sheriff's Office.
Yeah, no, going first.
Congratulations. And that concludes this part of our ceremony. We'll have a reception following this. If everybody will enter through the door here on the left, and there's refreshments in the back. And Mr. Chairman, you want to say anything?
Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you.
We will now resume our deliberations. Mr. Manager, what's next?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, next we have public addresses to the board. We have 3 people signed up. First person is Stephen West. If you come forward and give your name and address. And if the attorney will read our public addresses statement.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, Pitt County welcomes all comments on matters of public concern. If you'll please state your name and address prior to speaking, I will keep your time at 3 minutes.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Stephen West. I am a homeowner in the Macon's Crossing subdivision that's located off of Major Smith Road. As a representative of my community, we are asking you to redraw the current fire lines. Currently, the fire lines are very confusing and potentially costing lives. Major Smith Road is divided in half by fire lines, with one side being protected by Eastern Pines Fire Department, located 5.8 miles away, and the other fire department is Blackjack, located 7.2 miles away. Macon's Crossing is currently covered by Eastern Pines for the fire service, with the exception of one house in that neighborhood, which is covered by Blackjack, and it's ironically that it's my next door neighbor. Ayden Fire Department recently built a substation which sits 3.5 miles from our neighborhood, which can have faster response times to emergencies within our neighborhood and many houses located around the area. We are asking you to redraw these fire lines and consider response times and locations of the nearest station. As you're aware, time saves lives and fire doubles in size every minute with given to certain combustibles in homes today. Within Macon's Crossing, we have 22 children who live and play. This does not include the 30-plus children who live in Indian Wells subdivision and the 30-plus children who live in Poplar Grove subdivision, or the countless numbers of kids, parents, and adults who live along the Stanley Road, Major Smith Road, and Doc Lofton Road. Recently, a homeowner located on the Stanley Road suffered a house fire. The initial fire department that was dispatched was Eastern Pines. That apparatus arrived 15 minutes after the initial dispatch. Blackjack was second to be dispatched. Simpson was third, and Ayden was not dispatched until fourth. Ayden had a response time of 6 minutes, and they were the closest fire department. It is clear that some confusion in our area due to these fire lines and what other mutual aid should be dispatched. I'm aware that there are many communities in Pitt County that are affected by this, but we in the Major Smith, Stanley, and Doc Lofton areas are in a position in which you can make the difference right now. With a substation so close to our neighborhood and the community, we are asking you to not delay in redistricting these lines. Lives are at stake, not to mention property conservation that we will save as homeowners and which we are your stakeholders. The work has been done on the end of Ayden Fire Department. Now it rests in your hands to carry out and redraw in these lines. We are requesting to be placed in the Ayden Fire Department so there is no more question as to who is responding and to who to depend on in such an emergency. Again, Blackjack Fire Department is 7.2 miles away from our neighborhood. Eastern Pines is 5.8. Ayden is 3.5. This will save in homeowners. This will save in lives. So I'd encourage you to come out to our community, take a look, drive the route yourself, and we'd love to hear from you.
Go ahead.
Any future information that you can give us or we can give you, I encourage you to put this on the agenda for the 23rd meeting, because we have a lot of people in the community who do want to come and speak about this. I was the only one who was able to be here today. NFPA 1710 also points out with how many people are supposed to respond. Now, once those fire trucks and those apparatuses arrive on scene, you have to have a certain number of people who are able to be on scene in order to continue these firefighting efforts. I will leave this document with you. I will also leave the communications report as to who was, for the gentleman who suffered the structure fire on the Stanley Road. I will leave that call report for you as well to document these times. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. West. Mr. Manager, will you acknowledge the receipt of this presentation from Mr. West, and also see that the appropriate response will be made to the board and to this inquiry?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. West.
Mr. Chairman, just want to add too that Mr. West is a professional firefighter, so he understands the numbers and the statistics that he was giving us, and this is probably something that we need to look at on a county-wide basis as well, with the proliferation of substations that naturally is going to change response times. And like we did, what was it, 5 to 6 years ago when we adjusted the lines, we'll probably need to start a process similar.
Sure.
Thank you.
Any further response from the board? Okay, Mr. Manager.
Okay, next we have Charles Cradle.
Good morning again.
Good morning.
I usually say good afternoon, so good to say good morning. My name is Charles Cradle. I live at 1833 Staten Mill Road across from the CSX crew quarters and yard. Been here many times complaining about trains. We came today, my neighbors and I, thinking that we'd be addressing this as an item on the agenda, but we understand it's going to be postponed. But while we're here, we might as well speak. I want to tell you, first of all, that I'm not interested in being bought out. My wife and I chose our property. We chose it because we liked it. We paid what we had to pay to get it. We have 15 acres, some woodland, some pasture, a big yard that has to be cut every week. But we like it. We spent 7 years of our lives working on it, and we don't want to be driven off. So for us, a buyout would not be in our best interest. But we have a couple of neighbors for different reasons who might be interested in a buyout. So if that is an option and y'all decide that, then probably at least 2 of 5 would take a buyout. One I don't know, and the other 2, myself and another neighbor, would not be interested in that. So that's just food for your thought. I just always have wanted the railroad to live up their obligation. They promised us faithfully. Representative Wilson from their department, he's in charge, he's president of purchasing, said there'll be no standing running trains in your neighborhood. It'll disturb your neighborhood. Nothing could be further from the truth. They just want them to honor their word. If not, we want the world to know they don't, so other communities can benefit from that. I intend, since I woke up this morning at 5:25, 5:15, somewhere in there. Who looks at the clock at that time of the morning? But since I woke up by the northbound train coming in and parking right on top of us this morning, being left running, which it usually doesn't do, it reminds me that my sleep is the most important thing that I'm suffering from. Being parked around the house is one thing during the day. Having to cut the TV up so loud the dog can't hear afterwards is another. But at night, when it wakes me up, it's bad for my health. So I'm going to contact a contractor and have them come out and see what we can do about noise proofing of a sleeping area. And I'll get back with you on that, because that might be an option for us. But I just feel like that's some burden I shouldn't have to bear, and something I shouldn't have to do. So I may come back to you and ask you for some help along those lines. I have another neighbor that's here, and I'll sit down, but I just thank y'all. I know you care, and I appreciate that, and I know you're working and doing the best you can, and I just take my hat off to you. And I'm glad to live in a country that I can come in and talk to people that represent me, and they act on my behalf. I'm proud to be in that kind of country. Thank you, Bob.
Thank you, sir. Next.
Okay, next we have Brad Sawyer.
Good morning. My name is Brad Sawyer. I live at 1817 Staten Mill Road, Mr. Cradle's neighbor. I feel like I have to voice my opinion on this matter. Not much on the public speaking, but I feel like if I don't speak my voice, I'd be doing my family and my son kind of an injustice. It's mighty hard trying to raise a 23-month-old, and pretty much every single night or morning, they're getting woke up, and it's nothing you're doing, nothing your pets are doing. It's something outside of your control, and it's just sooner or later you kind of wish that we could do something about it, and it's really a bad situation. You know, when the train comes at all times of the day, night, whenever, and you just can't sleep. Sleep isn't a very important thing for grown-ups, for kids. So if there's anything that can be done to help resolve this situation, I think my wife and I, if there could be any kind of buyout, would be interested just to. It would be hard to deal with a train raising a kid, for the next 10, 20, 30 years. You feel like you're in between a rock and a hard place. You really feel like, what can you do to train as a big company, big entity? But yet, I feel like sooner or later you have to kind of stand up for yourself and at least voice your opinion, be heard. So that's why I'm here today in front of you. And if there's anything that can be done that we can work on this train situation, which I know y'all are, and I very, very much appreciate it. But like I said, I just feel like it's a shame that you go on vacation somewhere and you get better sleep than when you're at your own home. Your child sleeps better when you're not at his own home. It's kind of a bad situation. So anyway, that's kind of what I wanted to put in the air today. And I thank y'all for hearing me.
Thank you, sir. You had a good presentation, and come back.
All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Manager.
Okay, that's all we have signed up, unless there's somebody in the audience you'd like to come forward and speak.
Can I ask the attorney a question? Mr. Chairman?
Please.
Is our noise ordinance a misdemeanor or an infraction?
Misdemeanor.
So someone can be arrested for it?
Well, if you are, let me answer it the way I know is the true statement. Violation of our noise ordinance is a misdemeanor as a violation of a county ordinance. And so if you can be arrested for violating a county ordinance as a Class 3 misdemeanor, then yes. I'm not totally familiar with the criminal aspect of the difference between the infraction and the arrest.
How much is the noise ordinance violation?
I'd have to pull that. I
Okay,
want to say it's a small amount.
This is beyond frustrating, not with you, with the situation, because unlike any other level of government, we exist as county commissioners and local government to preserve quality of life. We don't invade other countries, we don't plan interstates, we don't deal with cross-county issues, we deal with our county and the quality of life in our county. And it feels like the railroad, we've been nice about it, but let's be honest, they lied about what they planned to do. They put that barracks there, and I'm totally convinced that this issue centers around that little house because the people on the train do not want to wait for the ride service to get back to the barracks, and I believe they almost admitted that to us when we had some meetings with them. So it'd be, I don't know if it needs to be a motion, but I believe we need to ask the sheriff to, every time they're out there, write a ticket or make an arrest if we can, and someone will eventually get tired of paying tickets or going to jail, and maybe we can get this into the courts at some point, and then the courts can decide whether they're going to side with citizens who have an absolute right to some quality of life, who never complained. They've lived beside the train tracks the entire time and have never once complained. But you got a man that can't even raise his child, has to take him on vacation to get rest. You got Mr. Cradle, who dedicated his entire adult life to public safety in law enforcement and can't get a night's sleep and is having to look at an expense to soundproof his bedroom because they won't do what they said they would do when we approve that. And that has been, I'm going to tell you, that has been the worst vote I've ever made on this board, was taking their word for it, that they would go by their word and park the train a quarter mile, is it, down the track as promised, but because they're too lazy to wait for a ride service, these people can't sleep, and it's got to affect their health. I mean, that's one of, if you read any health magazine, a good night's sleep is one of the best things for you. It's healing, it's restful, it recharges you, and they can't get it. And I've known Hugh a long time. He's not getting any younger, and it doesn't help that. And the poor child that is young can't even get a good night's sleep. And I wonder what that's going to transition to when the kid's in school and has tests the next day. And it's just,
Are you making a motion?
I am, and I would ask that we would request, I know we don't have any enforcement action or we can't rule over the sheriff, but we can request the sheriff to have his deputies take action on this, and repeated, constant, consistent action until there's some change, or until we at least get a decision from the courts that tell us we have no authority in this county and that the people's quality of life is out of our hands, and it's ultimately in the hands of the railroad. Thank you.
Is that a motion you're making?
Yes, sir, and I believe
I second
Ms.
it.
Perkins seconded.
All right, any further discussion?
Mr. Chairman, I think there are a lot of people, I don't know, but we've talked about this, and many of us, when we've served as vice chair and chair, have sat in meetings with the railroad officials. And I mean, it's taken us a while to get some top officials here. And there's this nodding and and we'll go back and we'll take this back. But not one thing has been done since the first time or report that we got, and I really don't know how many years ago that has been. And basically, it's exactly what Commissioner Webb said. The train, we built a off-track, whatever you want to call it, I don't know railroad terms, but we're just a little bit of distance to pull that up there, and they can leave it running, and it will disturb no one. That's why it was built that way. Yet, and I'm not going to say because they're too lazy to walk back, but I'm going to say they have barracks there to sleep and spend the night. Thank you, Switching Yard. I appreciate you keeping me on with the right vocabulary. Those people, those houses were there before. We promised them, just like the railroad promised us, and then they built the barracks. So they want the train to stop right there so they can get off and walk in the barracks and spend the night, or stay and rest until the next train they have to get on and serve on. So I know this sounds I think we've done everything, so I'm totally going to vote for this, no matter where it goes. At least it may cause some attention. Thank you for doing that.
Anybody else?
Mr. Chairman, Janice, question. If the sheriff's deputy goes out there and issues a citation, what if they refuse to accept it? Railroads have special rights. Can they even do that?
So, to not give you any misinformation, I'm hearing the motion that's on the floor to be that the sheriff enforce to the greatest extent of his ability. What I would need to do before he did that is sit down with the sheriff, look at our noise ordinance, confirm the applicability. I have a notion in my mind that is not fully researched at this point, that our ordinance may or may not be applicable to this situation, but I don't want to say that it is or isn't until I have an opportunity to do that research. But I think the message being loud and clear that if our local sheriff has any criminal enforcement authority to abate this activity, that he engage in that. And so I'd like to come back to the board, if your motion passes, to either say that what the sheriff has done or provide the explanation as to why he can't.
A follow-up to that before you go further. Let's say that you find that there's not. Is there any action that we can do to improve or strengthen the noise ordinance to where it has more teeth?
So I think the answer is yes, I will look into that. If it's just not applicable, then making it stronger isn't going to affect the situation. If it is applicable but not effective, then yes, we can make it stronger. And looking at the noise ordinance now, it's a $50 fine and imprisonment not to exceed 30 days. Is the penalty that's in our current ordinance, but that's cumulative for each violation. And so I think it is a point well taken, an angle that can be further pursued, and if the authority is there, then I will work with the sheriff to enforce as we can.
Can we compound the fine? If it starts at 50, the second 100, the third one 200, next 400, and let it keep doubling up. Let it be $1 million until it finally stings them enough that they do something.
So the ordinance is not written that way, but I'm understanding you to say that if it can be enforced, let's come back and talk about how we can make this stronger to have a more significant
I think you have
impact.
universal approval from that from the board.
Right. I need to further research and bring back to you the applicability, because I have some reservations about our application of a local ordinance to the railroad.
Thank you.
But but I don't want to rule that out now without knowing it for certain.
Any further comment? You have your motion. We've got a second. All in favor of the motion indicate by raising your right hand.
Okay.
All opposed? So ordered. Up comes the manager.
Okay, next you have items to report. First one is your tax collection report. Raymond Revilla, if you'll come forward, please.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman.
morning.
Commissioners. Pitt County fiscal year to date, combined collection for real and personal property, the rate is 98.22%. Combined rate 1 year ago for real and personal property was 98.24%. Pitt County Tax Administration continues to pursue all outstanding taxes using the necessary remedies available through the North Carolina General Statutes. These include bank attachments, wage and salary garnishments, escheated fund attachments, sheriff levies, rent and lease levies, the North Carolina Debt Set-Off Program, and in-rem foreclosure.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor indicate by raising your right hand. All opposed, like, so ordered. Thank you. All right, Mr. Manager.
Okay, next under the manager's report, you have a series of items. The announcement of the next meeting dates, April 23rd at 6 p.m., then May 7th at 9 a.m. Item B is an announcement regarding our backup center, our 911 backup center that's located at our Technology Enterprise Center. We'll be having a ribbon cutting ceremony on April 9th at 2 p.m. in the afternoon. And this will also coincide with the recognition of National Telecommunicators Week. You've got a proclamation on the consent agenda regarding this. And we also have a PSA we'd like to show real quick regarding Telecommunicators Week. If our PIO will play that for us, please, as part of this item.
Now, where was that backup? Ribbon cutting will be. Where's the location, Mary?
That's on Green Street at the old prep building. It's Technology Enterprise Center now.
County 911.
Hi, I just found my father on the ground. I need an ambulance to our house.
Okay, and what's the address you need an ambulance?
It is 1603 Bob White Court.
1603 Bob White Court?
Yes.
Okay, and what's the telephone number you're calling me from?
555-1234.
Okay, tell me exactly what happened.
Pitt County Attention Eastern Time EMS response 1603 Bob White Court, 1603 Bob White Court, Crossroads Quail Point Drive, in response to a 45-year-old male, unconscious, emergency traffic, Pitt County by 1448.
My partner's getting the ambulance on the way. I just need to get a little more information from you while we're getting in there, okay?
Okay.
Is he breathing completely normal?
No, it's not.
Okay, I want you to say now every single time he takes a breath in, starting immediately. Start now.
Now?
Okay.
Now.
Okay.
Now?
Okay. Is he still unconscious?
Yes.
Sending the paramedics to help you now. Stay on the line and I'll tell you exactly what to do next. Are you right by him now?
I am.
Listen carefully. Lay him flat on his back and remove any pillows.
Okay.
Now place your hand on his forehead, your other hand under his neck, then tilt the head back. Put your ear next to his mouth. Can you feel or hear any breathing?
No, I don't.
We've already got the ambulance on the way. Listen carefully. I'm going to tell you how to do chest compression. Make sure he is flat on his back on the ground. Flat on his back?
Yes.
Now place the heel of your hand on the breastbone in the center of the chest, right between the nipples. Put your other hand on top of that hand. Let me know when you've done that.
Pitt County Attention Eastern Time EMS, Citizens Fire, Winterville EMS, 1470, response 1603 Bob White Court, 1603 Bob White Court, 25-year-old male, cardiac arrest, CPR is currently in progress. Emergency traffic. Pitt County standing by 1449.
1, 2. Okay, I need you to go faster. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Just like that. Keep that. Okay. Keep that
1,
pace.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Okay, good job. Keep counting.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Good job.
One,
Keep going. You're doing
2,
great. They're on the way.
3,
They're coming as
4,
quickly as they can, but they
5,
got to get there fast.
3411 on scene. 1451.
Okay, they're coming in now.
Okay, you did a great job. They're going to take over from here, okay?
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Bye.
Hello, Pitt County. My name is Jimmy Hodges, Deputy EM Director of the 911 Communications Division. What you just saw was a reenactment of a 911 call in real time. Although this was a reenactment and not all 911 calls are this severe in nature, there are some points we all can take away from this as Pitt County citizens. If you do have to call 911, please remember, stay calm so we can understand you. Also, be aware of your location and your surroundings so we can get the right responders to you promptly and answer our questions to the best of your ability. This way we can help you in your time of need. If you have any questions concerning 911 communications, please call Pitt County Emergency Management at 902-3950.
So again, there's a proclamation on the agenda, consent agenda to recognize Telecommunicators Week, National Telecommunicators Week, that will be recognized on the 9th through the 15th, actually this week in April. And again, there's the ribbon cutting ceremony that will be held at the new backup 911 center. And the primary backup 911 center here is in the county office building. If this center were to go down for some reason, the backup center is fully functional to provide every capacity we have here at the backup. And this was actually a state mandate that all counties or all PSAPs, Public Safety Answering Point, have a backup center. And you funded this, I think it was up 1.3, I can't remember the exact cost figure on it, but this was funded partly through the 911 surcharge funds everybody pays on a landline or a cell phone, as well as some general fund appropriation that funded the backup center. Well, a few other items on the agenda. Item C, the Convergent Economic Development Strategy sessions. You should have received an email or communication in the weekly info packet. This is the convergent study that's being taken on by the city, the county, the Committee 100, and GUC. They're holding these planning sessions or these input sessions this week beginning tomorrow. So Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. There's 3 sessions on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, and 1 session Friday morning. I put another copy of the letter in front of you. If the board has not signed up for one of these, I'd highly encourage you, if you can, to make one of these as this planning process continues regarding how economic development will be rendered in Pitt County, what type of goals will be pursued, what type of structure will be looked at in terms of enhancing what we currently do. Item D, just to announce to you the joint meeting with the Board of Education. This is an outcome, I believe, from the last meeting. Commissioner Colson had brought this up to talk about safety concerns in Pitt County schools. We have this arranged for April 16th from 4 to 5:30 p.m. The school board has a meeting, I believe, at 6 o'clock, so there will have to be a firm cutoff on the time for this. We have invited all the law enforcement in Pitt County from all 10 municipalities. Also, we've invited when I say law enforcement, I'm talking about the chiefs of the 10 municipalities, as well as we've invited Vidant, ECU, and PCC, their chiefs, just to be in attendance. The actual joint meeting with the Board of Education will be both boards seated together up front in the audience, kind of like we have here. This will be the 2 boards up front. The law enforcement will be in session in case they're needed to be called upon. Yes,
How
sir.
about the Highway Patrol? Should we have a representative from there?
We could reach out to them. Jan, if you will make a note of that, I will too. We'll extend an invitation to them as well. Item E, just to remind you, the budget workshops will begin on Tuesday, April 24th, and that should say 24th through 27th. That'd be Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then Friday as well. And if you look at item F, on that Friday the 27th, you also have a legislative breakfast with our legislative delegation. That will be at the old Beef Barn, now called the Barn at 400 St. Andrew Street. We'll be meeting with our local legislative delegation as before they start entering the short session of the General Assembly to talk about legislative goals and issues that are pertinent to Pitt County. Item G, we have a number of things here this morning. This is a breakfast with the Shepherd Memorial Library on April 30th at 8 a.m. That's their annual breakfast, and I believe that is a Monday. Item H, just to announce to the board, the UNC School of Government has an initiative out there regarding the opioid crisis. They're putting out in partnership with Blue Cross Blue Shield, a 2-year grant. They're going to select 10 jurisdictions across the state, and they're awarding funding at $20,000. I believe it's per year over the two. I think it's per year, so $40,000 total. And they're encouraging either multiple counties or a county and multiple cities, multiple jurisdictions to partner together to apply for this. In talking with the city of Greenville, the city manager Ann Wall and I have talked, and we've submitted an application. We've also put in there partnered. You have to have 3 core members. So you have the city, the county, and the town of Ayden as a smaller municipality. We've had other interests expressed by other municipalities as we went along through this process. So we will find out in May whether we're funded for this, and then this will be, the whole idea behind this is to develop policies to help combat the opioid situation or crisis that's facing our communities, our state, our nation, but obviously for this planning effort, our community, and to hopefully get those policies put into effect that will help decrease opioid issues. Item I had a request from Commissioner Huggins regarding a travel exception. This is for the Alliance of North Carolina Black Elected Officials. What you have right now in your travel budget, we basically just account for dollars in there for the board members to travel to the National NACO Conference in the summer, the NACO Legislative Conference in the winter, and then the NCACC State Conference in the summer. So this is a travel exception that would be outside of the normal travel as stipulated by your travel policy and would require additional appropriation of dollars if the board wanted to entertain this.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to speak on that. I'm against this, and I'll tell you why. Because if every commissioner decided that they wanted to go to some event that's outside of our travel policy and we approve it, we will lose control of our travel policy. And there are a number of events that I've been to since I've been a county commissioner. They've been out of county. They've been several counties away that have involved overnight stays that I did not seek reimbursement for. I didn't feel like it was proper in lieu of our current travel policy. And so I think it's a slippery slope for us to make exceptions to the travel policy.
Anything else, Mr. Manager?
Unless Commissioner Huggins, do you want to say anything? Or?
Well, I'm asking to attend, and so it's it's up to you whether you pass it. I would love to attend and represent Pitt County. As Commissioner Williams is on the front page of the brochure of the program, so she's but it is my wish to attend on behalf of this board, this county. So I ask for your permission.
Well, then I'd like to make a motion to the effect of what I'd said, and that we do not approve of an exception.
I believe there was 2 or 3 that wanted to speak before your motion. Melvin and then Mary.
Mr. Chairman, certainly support this, and but not only for the black elected official, but any other county commissioner who would like to go on a conference that would be of benefit to the citizens of Pitt County. I think it's only wise to do so. I don't think it's that many that take place during a year, to my knowledge. But as long as it's referenced and pertaining to helping the citizens of Pitt County, and I certainly support it. I don't think it's going to be a magnitude of these positions. So that's my support.
Mary.
Since it was mentioned that I was on the front page of that. I paid my own way. I was told that it was not in the policy, and I paid my own way to that, and I attended as an individual and as an elected official, but I paid my own way.
Tom?
I'd like to make a motion that we carefully consider, or that we don't do this now. I think that if we're going to do this, this ought to be a subject that's brought before us, and then try to look at a whole myriad of potential things that might impact the travel policy. But we have a budget item. In fact, we ran out of money a couple of times during the year, where we've had to go into fund balance in order to be able to fund it. We actually changed the travel policy now to where we have a limited number of commissioners that can actually attend various events, and in the hopes of trying to preserve the integrity of that set amount that we set aside. So my motion is that we don't make an exception at this particular time.
Is there a second?
I second it, and mainly because it was a problem before, and we made a decision as a group of commissioners to come up with a travel policy because it really did get out of hand a couple of times, and I think it's a very fair, even keel policy.
Glenn?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't have a problem with people, commissioners attending things. But at the same time, our travel is one of the most heavily publicly scrutinized things. And so the things that we block aside for are things that the county is a member of, NACO and the Association of Commissioners. I sit on the North Carolina Leadership Forum this year through Duke University, and I cover that travel to Durham for those meetings, just because it is outside of a membership organization, even though I do represent Pitt County, and I was asked because I was a Pitt County Commissioner that I attended. And so in agreeing to what I understood, I would just handle the driving and everything myself on that.
And did you have something?
Yes, I do want to. At a previous conference that I was approved to attend in Greensboro, I did not attend that. So I did not spend, the county did not spend money sending me to the Strive meeting in Greensboro back a couple of months ago. So,
any further discussion?
One other thing, just to remind us, we do get $200 a month in travel allowance, and I realize that is primarily in county, but I doubt that any of us really use that much in county. So, we do have a travel allowance that is given to each of us.
Any further discussion? If not, all in favor of Mr. Colson's motion indicate by raising your right hand. All opposed? You got the count? Yes. All right, Mr. Manager, next.
Okay, the last item is just want to make an announcement regarding the Southwest Bypass Land Use Plan. There will be a planning workshop on April 9th at PCC from 4 to 7, and as you recall, James Rhodes gave you a presentation or update at your last board meeting, but do encourage any board members who are interested in the meeting. This is a floating workshop that will be held between the hours of 4 and 7. This will be in the GOES Student Center at PCC. Mr. Chairman, that's all I have.
Do we have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second it.
All in favor indicate by raising your right hand. All opposed? All right, next.
Next, you have items for decision, a discussion item, actually, item for discussion regarding banking services, and this item is on the agenda at the request of Vice Chairman Webb, and this deals with our current banking relationship that we both, I guess, from an investment account standpoint and our daily accounts that we have with the local bank here in town. And with that, Vice Chairman Webb, I might kind of let you take it.
As we know, and we've read in the paper and everything, Wells Fargo is closing their call center here. And as I've mentioned to many people, it's not a punitive action. They have a business to run. They have to make business decisions. I'm not upset with them making business decisions. But at the same time, when you look at the amount of money that the county has invested in them, I think that the county should do business with the people who are doing business with us, who are staked out in the community. and there's a lot of local banks and regional banks here. And when you look at our general checking, our balances between $20 and $25 million, that may not be a huge blip on the radar for Wells Fargo, and may be part of why they can make the decisions they make, but it would be changing for our local and regional banks. So what I would ask is that we consider doing an RFP for our daily stuff, because understanding we can't change it over today if we decided to. If we did, that would put us in a bad spot with payroll and all of our pass-through accounts, and we don't want to really put the management team in such a bad spot trying to maneuver that, or our employees not get paid or something like that. That would cause more pain than needed. But I think at the same time, we can start the RFP procedure, which will give us a number of months to start that transition to a new entity. And that way we keep the money in North Carolina instead of sending it to California. We keep it here. We can either keep it in the county or at least keep it regionally. I think something we can do immediately is with our investments. I think those can be transferred fairly fast, if I'm correct. Brian?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
I have a comment. I agree with Glenn Webb on his comments. However, one thing that's very dear to me is the Pitt County e-check. I would hate to see there be any glitch in our citizens being able to benefit from that.
Yeah, we would want to make sure, I mean, Wells Fargo provides a list of services that are very encompassing in terms, so we want to make sure if we did put this on the street, if whoever is selected, maybe Wells Fargo at the end of the day would be selected again, but we'd want to make sure we have at least the same level of service we're currently receiving. And it's a very complicated list of banking services that are provided to us at a very high level of service. So, and I would ask the board, if you do want to do this, please give us with a new finance director, CFO on board, please give us the next year to get this out. And it's nothing we want to do quickly and again, I mean, all banks would be welcome to respond to the RFP and let the best bank who can provide the list of services we're requesting for. And also we want to actually protect the integrity of what we do in terms of making sure that there's a seamless transition if there was a change.
And that's the point being of the RFP, is I don't want to make a knee-jerk reaction and rip everything away and cause us more problems or any problems at all, where we can have a professional RFP put out, we can evaluate it and then make a decision. And at the end of the day, it may not be something that we can do, but I think it's worth looking into, and I think there's a lot of financial institutions that can offer the services and that are interested in doing so for the county. And so that would be what I'd ask.
The statement before you made the last statement said an RFP to transit to something else, and that bothered me a little bit. I have no problem with issuing an RFP because I think that's what we did when we made the decision, I may be wrong, to go with whatever bank that can give us all the services that we need. And I'm not advocating for anything, but I think putting out an RFP for the next year, give you all time to get on board, bring back the information to us. It gives other banks an opportunity to apply for that. But it's running a county financially is very, very involved, and I think we need to make sure we're with the bank that can give us the best service. So I'm in favor of the RFP, but I am not in favor of it saying that it transits us into another bank or whatever. I want the information to come back to us. Just do it like we've done it in the past.
Yeah, Wells Fargo, in what I'm suggesting, they would not be precluded from being able to participate.
Sure,
in the RFP.
just like we've always done in the past.
Right. It'd be fully open.
Research and come up with the best thing for the county.
Beth, are you making an overture different than what Glenn's was?
No, I just want to make sure that I understand, and he just reiterated that we would just be putting an RFP out there for all the banks that want to come forward with the services that we expect and have to have in the county for the finance people and for our management to do the job for the citizens, because we want the best people helping us. And I'm not going to say anything about, I regret so much that the number of jobs that are going away because of Wells Fargo's business center. And it's like a call center, correct?
Auto finance, I believe.
Yes, and you call in other words, it's got the name, but it's not like we're banking with that building. So our banking with whoever we bank with just needs to be the best for Pitt County, and that can give us the best services. So I have no problem, because I think it's been a while since we've done an RFP. So that, I don't know exactly how you stated your motion, but that's what I can support.
You've captured the spirit of what I was asking.
Okay.
Tom?
Well, kind of piggybacking off of what Beth said, will we even be talking about this now if Wells Fargo had not even made the announcement about the closing of the facility? I don't think so. I think that this will be viewed as being retaliatory. I think we, as a body, need to look at it from a standpoint, which would go in the spirit of what you're saying, Glenn, of looking for the best banking service that supports, Pitt County. But I don't think we should do anything just because of retaliatory measures. Having been a general manager, yes, it was a small company, but I had to make very unpopular decisions at times. But they were the decisions that were in support of the company. Wells Fargo, I think, has probably made a business decision. And for whatever reason, they've elected to, it's going to hurt our community. But if they're still the best bank for us, then they need to be still used by us.
Mary, and then Ann, and then Mary.
What has been our service with Wells Fargo? What kind of service have we received?
We have been very pleased with the service we received from Wells Fargo. Honestly, we've been with them since the early 2000s. We have not put anything out on the street. The level of service they provide, we believe, is maybe there are other banks out there that could match it, but we believe it's unparalleled at the moment. We won't really know that until we put an RFP on the street to truly determine that. And I just want to throw in there too that, obviously the decision on closing the Wells Fargo auto finance, I'm going to call it, division here in Pitt County is tragic and it's costing a lot of jobs. But we realize too that is separate and apart from, Wells Fargo is Wells Fargo, but the banking division arena of this is different than that, and that we just don't want to send the wrong message. Kind of echoing Commissioner Colson.
Mr. Manager,
Wait.
I'm sorry.
We'll get back. Had you finished?
No, not quite. I'm kind of like Tom in his comment that, first of all, we would not be having this conversation had Wells Fargo not moved to close the office here. And yes, it's going to hurt us, and it's going to hurt me personally because I have family members working there. But to act just because they're closing, and if we are receiving excellent service and have been, I'm for looking at other banks, but not just because they are closing, but if our process of choosing a bank is fine with our finance people, so that's kind of where I am. But I support you putting it out there to look at other banks, but not just because Wells Fargo chose to leave us here in the county.
Mary, and then Charles.
I like the fact that we're the same.
Melvin after that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question is, how long has it been since we looked at these kinds of services?
Again, it's been since probably the early 2000s, 2002, 2003, as best we can recollect.
That's about 18 years?
15 years.
So what I'm saying is, since there's 600 jobs that we know that's lost, that's economy for us. And yes, Wells Fargo did make a business decision. But when you make these kind of business decisions, I think it's a good time to at least look at the possibilities. I agree with Glenn. I agree that this may be the appropriate time to look into that, to let them know that we are studying it, to let the community know that we are conscious about the loss of the money from this county, and let the other businesses know who come here to do business that we want to be an open-minded group for as far as services are concerned. But I think when you make business decisions, they expect you to do some business decision of your own. And this is a business decision for us to look at it and examine and get the best financial institution to handle it, because you don't do these often.
Thank you, Mary. Charles?
Yes, a question for Scott. You said we've been with Wells Fargo since the year 2000?
Right, or the early 2000s.
Okay, now, my question is specific. Did we choose Wells Fargo, or did we get it because we were formerly with Wachovia?
Right. My understanding is we went through an RFP process back then, and back then it was Wachovia that then became Wells Fargo a number of years later.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Wait a minute. Beth and then Jenny.
I'm in favor.
Excuse me, Beth,
okay.
hold it. Melvin's next.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question probably is to Scott. In listening to the best method in terms of how do we, how often do we submit RFPs? I think this ought to be a learning process in terms that we should, I think, as a county, submit RFPs on a standard basis, maybe every 10 years, every 5 years, or just have something that we could reach out toward doing to institutions that would be beneficial to the county. Let this be a standard procedure, maybe from this part forward. I don't know what we have with standard practice in terms of how we submit these RFPs.
We don't for banking services. I will say that we are called upon by banks probably quarterly, or if not every other month, in terms of being courted to see what line of services they provide. I think we've always determined that the line of services that we currently get from Wells Fargo, what they do for us, to my knowledge, surpassed what anybody else could do. Now, again, I can't say that definitively until we put an RFP on the street and see what other banks can line up if they can meet what we are currently receiving in terms of services.
Would it be beneficial for the county to set up a policy in line with what Glenn is saying, to have RFPs submitted every so many years?
Well, with banking services, it will be, if the board decides to change, it's a major undertaking to do that. Normally you might look every 3 years to put an RFP on the street for services. You wouldn't want to do that with banking because it would be too disruptive. I'd say every 5 to 7 maybe, if the board wanted to put something in writing or to memorialize that.
Did you finish, Melvin?
I'm finished.
Beth and then Jimmy.
I can support a motion to do something similar to exactly what you're saying, Melvin, not as a knee-jerk reaction to the, closing of Wells Fargo, which we have already, it is tragic, and it has made me very sad for the citizens, and it affects our development and our businesses all over, to lose that many jobs. And I noticed that it already showed that our job was down already. So anyway, I would support a motion for us to look at issuing an RFP to the banks, get the information back, let our finance people and our group, your management team, look at it and come back to us with a report. And I would say 10 to 15 years maybe issue one. I don't know how much is involved, it seems like, but I don't think it should be less than 10 years because it takes that long to get it done. Does that make sense to you? I don't want it to be as if we are reacting and saying, we're going to do this because. I want us to do this because I think it'll be good practice for the county.
I'll amend my motion. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr.
Well,
Garrett,
I was going to second that motion because what you said was essentially what I was going to say. However, Scott, I was thinking it would be reasonable to do that every 5 years. And then we would look at the results and determine based upon all the things that we would have to do, was that the most economical thing for us to do as a county. We may have a bank that would come in with some slightly more attractive options, but it may cost us more to make that transition than it was worth. So I would like to say, to second your motion and put it every 5 years, if that is reasonable.
Mr. Chairman, can we ask Brian Barnett maybe to pipe in terms of, from his opinion on the number, how often, from a CFO standpoint?
I would have to pipe in and say anywhere between the 5 to 10 years. Switching banks would probably take us close to 6 months if we made a decision to actually change full services. So we don't want to spend, half a year switching and then 4 years later back out switching again.
Yeah.
But I do think, being that we switched to Wachovia in 2001, I believe is when we made the switch, and then Wachovia was acquired by Wells Fargo, it probably is an opportune time to at least take a look at what other banks can provide and then weigh out the results to see if it's cost-effective and beneficial to switch.
Mr. Chairman.
Wait a minute, Mary. Jimmy, had you finished?
So I would just like to include in the motion that Beth made that we set a standard time to periodically review and then decide if we're going to make a transition, a change.
Okay, so a time to review.
Yeah.
And I saw you shoot up 7.
Yeah,
and
because you said from 5 to 10, so I said 7.
Okay, so I would support that, meaning when you say review, not necessarily put out RFPs at that time, but review it every 7 years, and if things are going well, then and if they're not going well, we do another RFP.
Okay.
I'm
Mary.
fine with that.
I'd hate to just appear that we are marketing who gets our services. And when you said 5 years, it made me cringe a little bit, because to change from one procedure to another in a banking world or in a business state is a long process. And that made me cringe with my business education background. So I was concerned, that's why I was wanting much to know how long, and he said 2001. That make us be with Wachovia, Wells Fargo, whatever it was, for 17 years. So it's about time to look at it. It's about time to look at it and have the RFP submit.
I think the discussion here has been very fruitful, but if those of you that's ever been through a budget before for this county is well aware that every year we have a budget. We go through the financing, where the money is, and the issue of where money is being held has been discussed. I remember. Yeah, am I the only one who remembers that?
No, you're.
But as to it being with a specific bank, every year the staff would come back, the finance officer, say they were getting what the best services from where they were. And that's the reason it stayed where it was over the years. We didn't just blanketly go through a budget and not talk about all this, but the motions that's been made is well taken to get overtures from other people, and I think that in any business, that's what you ought to do. But whether it's 5 or 6 or 7 years, depends on what kind of service you're getting from the people that's serving you. So, are we ready to vote on the motion? You understand what your motion is?
I want the motion stated.
Well, Mr. Chairman, you have a motion by Vice Chairman Webb that didn't get a second. Then we have a motion from Commissioner Ward.
I thought we had a second on Glenn's.
I'll second it.
But I thought you did
I
long
thought he
ago.
did too.
Okay. Is that different than Commissioner Ward's motion?
Probably. I'll amend it to be that we ask that we put out an RFP and, why don't we do two separate motions? One motion for the RFP for this time, and then a second motion for the time frame that we want to do. That way they're handled apart from each other.
That'll work.
And not tied together.
You're talking about one as a time frame and the other as a policy.
Right. So it'd be my motion that we put an RFP out for our banking services, encapsulating the full banking program that we have, if that's correct, Mr. Manager. And then if that has a second.
Is that
Charles has already seconded it.
Okay. All right, now, discussion on that we're fixing to vote on. Isn't that sufficient at this time?
Yes.
That we're fixing to get into the budget situation? We're going to be reviewing all this again? I don't see why you need two motions, is what I'm saying.
I'm fine with it.
All right, all in favor of the motion indicate by raising your right hand. Now, is there a second motion that the group desires?
I think that this
policy.
motion is still valid and that we ought to have a motion, a policy that we review this or even put out RFPs every 7 years and go with the one that we conclude is most economical for us, and that would consider what they were offering versus, and also what it would cost us to make the transition.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, my motion was to review every 7 years and determine if we needed to put out an RFP, not to put out an RFP every 7 years. So if you'll approve that, if you'll second that.
I'm okay with that.
Okay, thank you.
Is that your second, Jimmy?
Yes.
Discussion, Tom?
We shouldn't put a specific enumerated time, because if we get lousy service in 1 year, are we going to wait 6 more years? I think we ought to say, if you want to put 7 years or 10 years or some number, but then follow it up with something or whenever it is in the best interest of the county.
Sure.
Something that does not say.
That's fine with me.
I'm fine with that. I think we would do that anyway. If Scott came to us and said
well,
he
the
was
manager
having some
would
issues,
come, somebody in the
we would
finance
proceed.
Yes.
But I'm okay with including that in the motion. It's fine with me.
This further discussion, including what's Tom wanted?
Well, yeah, basically I'm saying, was somebody else better wordsmithing than me. Glenn, you're great at that. But, to say, or whenever it is in the best interest of the county to pursue a new banking service.
But that's not doing anything, Tom.
Yes, exactly, because
Motion
we're
accept is
already
not,
doing
so why
that.
do you need it
I
is my-
withdraw my motion,
Anything
the one I had
else?
on the floor.
Point of clarification, Mr. Chairman, regarding the investment portfolio side of our relationship with Wells Fargo, are we leaving that, because that is separate and apart from banking services, are we leaving that intact as is?
Yes, as far as I'm concerned.
We'll just consider that with the RFP.
I think we would, you'd really have to have, Brian help me here on the investment portfolio in terms of an RFP. We really couldn't do that as part of the banking services, right?
That's not on this list, is it?
Way back.
I think so.
Well,
Yes.
Mr. Manager,
Not on the list, so we don't discuss it.
since 2014, I've never known us to look at another banking services, whatever. We do the budget, yes, but we don't look at other banks and services during that budget time. So,
Like I said, we do internally have banks coming to us, telling us what their services are, whether it's financial advisors or as local banks who are trying to court us to do business with us like we do with Wells Fargo. So it's probably done more internally, but and maybe indirectly that's reflected as we come before you at budget.
As for the investments, I just asked Brian to look into it and see if there's a better option for us, or at least an equal option for us on the investments, because that doesn't handle pass-through, and just bring it back to us at the next meeting. Would the next meeting be okay, Brian?
I think on the investment side, we can have you an answer before the next meeting.
Because, we don't want to move it and lose.
Correct.
That would be, counterproductive because, again, and we might not be talking about it all if they weren't moving. I understand the banking part's separate, Tom, but it can't be punitive because even though this is a lot of money for us, it's not for them. So it would be like you taking 20 cents out of my bank account comparatively. So it's not going to hurt them, and that's not the point. The point is to get the best deal for the county. And that might just be, that is just the issue that kicked off the thinking that maybe we need to reevaluate and see what we do because we've been doing it for so long one way. But there may be a better deal. There may not be.
Any further discussion on banking today?
No, sir.
If not, let's move on.
All right. Next, you have a closed session on the agenda. If the attorney will take us into closed session.
Yes, it has been suggested that this board go into closed session pursuant to North Carolina General Statute 143-318.11A4 to discuss matters relating to the location or expansion of industries or other businesses in the area served by the public body. 143-318.11A5 to establish or instruct the public body staff concerning a position to be taken by or on behalf of a public body with regard to the acquisition of property, subsection A1 with regard to the content of your closed session minutes, and subsection A3 with regard to attorney-client privilege.
Do we have a motion to go to closed session? All in favor indicate by raising your right hand. The rest of you will excuse us for a while. We'll try to be back within an hour and a half. Any further business of the board?
I would like to make a motion to approve the March 12th closed
Second it.
session minutes, content only.
All in favor, raise your right hand. All right, Mr. McLaughlin.
Mr. Chairman, I received several calls from the citizens and organizations of Pitt County in reference to the Board of Elections. I just want to make a statement that as a liaison for the Justice Department representing the County Board of Election, and Chairman Sonny McLaughlin is doing an outstanding job, I think, in leading the Democratic Party. He submitted 3 names to the North Carolina Board of Election and ethics enforcement, and I think that was outstanding that he did that. But Pitt County has 35% of black that's registered to vote, and we have a black representation on the board now. And I certainly think that we need to continue that effort in view of the community and the county makeup. And so I certainly support any kind of way that we can keep black representation on that board. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. McLaughlin, I think you need to take that back to the respective parties, the Democratic Party and the Republican parties that presented information to the state agency, but I appreciate your concern. Anything else? Any comments? Any motion?
Well, I have a comment. I'd like to make a comment. We're getting ready to have a meeting with the school board, joint meeting. It's going to be discussing school safety. And yesterday, when I was reading the paper, I got to the grand jury section, and it just dawned on me. I said, I wonder, with all the calls that we have for bans, and now I understand that people say that, oh, we're not going to come and take your guns. But law-abiding citizens that have never done anything wrong, they are a target. And you can look around the country, you can see various communities that are talking about AR-style weapons. They call it an assault rifle. Do you know what AR stands for? It's Armalite. It's not assault rifle. It's another misconception. But the people that owns that, the vast majority of them, would never do anything illegal. They really use it for target practice and for self-defense as well as pistols and so on. You think that they're not going to come for your pistols later on? So I was reading this grand jury thing, and I saw these weapon violations by felons. And half of these people that are not good citizens, they have weapons. So when we finally get around to the point where we want to ban weapons in Pitt County, and it's coming, there'll be arguments here somewhere along the line to take it away from legal, law-abiding citizens. The bad guys are still going to have them. They're still going to have them. The police aren't going to be any safer because the bad guys are still going to have them. Citizens are going to be less safe because they don't have any way to protect themselves. So again, as you're probably going to hear from this with comments that I have over a period of time, because I'm adamant that the Second Amendment, you breach it, and the rest of the amendments don't matter. The rest of the Bill of Rights will not last. What's my proof to that? Look at the 10th Amendment. Basically, it's 27, 28 words, I think it's 28 words long, that says that anything that is not specifically enumerated in the Constitution is to be held in reserve to the states and or the citizens of the states. Look at how many things the federal government has, all the way from education on down, that are commerce. It's not necessarily stated in the Constitution. They have gone way beyond it. The 10th Amendment has been avoided. It has been essentially eliminated without going through the proper channels. Some people say the Constitution should be a living document, and it is, and the Founding Fathers put it as such. That we can go and we can remove any amendment we want, provided you can get a majority of the states to do away with it. Prohibition, we had it, and then we didn't have it. So you got amendments in there that took away the ability to have liquor, and then you have another to put it back. There are other things in the Constitution that were changed because it is a living document, because they went through the procedures. And not to have some radical court, whether it's on the left or the right, to make a decision that breaches their authority. And that's what troubles me. We're hearing now from the courts that are telling that it doesn't matter where you're elected, it doesn't matter where you have a constitutional right or whatever, we'll decide. We'll decide to take away your rights. We will decide to take away and breach your rights to the Constitution. So, anyway, I just wanted to make that statement. Please, read the grand jury. Look at how many weapon violations there are. They're still going to have them.
Any further comment from commissioners?
I move for adjournment.
I second.
All in favor, stand.
He got his
Thank you.
soapbox in for the day.
Well, it needs to be said.